What was your scariest a second later, and I would died moment? Outside my college dorm my freshman year there was this stoop that was half under the building, half out from under it. The building was 18 stories tall. So I'm sitting out there sitting on the steps, not under the building, and I get up for no real reason and walk under the building. As soon as I get under the building, a huge sheet of glass falls right where I was sitting. Some idiots were messing around on the 11th floor and knocked a 10x9 window pane out of its mooring. I was walking into a Miller's outpost, tells you the time period, and the M from the sign above the store fell down and hit me on the shoulder. It was a big glass sign. One moment sooner and it hits my head. Because it drew blood, the store offered to give me any item I wanted, so I wouldn't sue. I chose an awful red cardigan. I was 16 and dumb. My friend and I were taking an elevator down to the cafeteria in our dorm in college. For some reason, we were arguing about something when the doors opened, so we hung back for a second. Then the elevator dropped 2 floors with the doors open. I still hate getting in / out of elevators, and I do a weird running start every time. Edit. Happened in Canada. Was an old building / elevator. 1950s. Second edit. We were in the elevator when it dropped. More terrified of the getting sliced in half aspect than the drop. I passed out at work and came around in the hospital. They diagnosed a bleed on the brain and eventually decided to drill a hole in my skull to drain the fluid. Just as they were about to put me under, the phone rang. It was the head of neurology. I actually had a burst aneurysm. According to my doctor, I would have probably been dead seconds after they started the surgery. When I was in junior high I was carpooling with another kid and her mom. For a reason I can't fathom she decided to race a transit train hoping to get across the tracks before the train stopped traffic. She gunned the car. I was in the backseat screaming no. She hit the train. Because I was in the backseat I was injured the least. I had a pointy piece of metal pierce through my jeans and flesh until it hit bone. Had she been a second faster the train would have hit us broadside and killed us all. Edit to answer the questions. This was 1980. She was not charged or sued. It was labeled an accident. She and her daughter suffered broken bones, lacerations, and concussions. Because of the parental acrimony I couldn't be friends with the girl anymore. The family moved away before the end of the school year. I know at the time her mum was still not working. I'm not sure if she ever went back to work. Clearly she had or had developed some kind of mental or emotional problem which the accident probably made worse. I wondered if she was an alcoholic who began day drinking, but I never mentioned my suspicion to anyone. I needed crutches for a few months. My story is a second earlier, and I would have died. Basically I got T-boned by a van while riding my bicycle. Missed me by a couple inches, destroyed the back of the bike, and threw me into traffic. A couple months ago I was in a head-on collision with some dude on crack driving down the wrong side of the road with his headlights out. I was going probably around 50 before I saw him. Speed limit was 55 so that's my best guess. Saw him with a second or two of reaction time. Managed to brake hard and swerve over only bad enough to total my car, but I still walked away with nothing more than a sore neck. If I hadn't seen the dude I don't doubt that I cold died or been seriously injured. About 30 years ago my family and I were driving up to Jasper, Alberta in the winter. There was a slow car in front of us and an impatient one behind us who kept trying to pass. Eventually the car behind us did pass on a blind corner and hit a logging truck head on. The slow car in front of us was also hit, but my dad managed to put us in the shoulder and not in the collision. This was way before mobile phones or anything like that. So I remember my dad and my older brother getting out and going over the other cars and talking with the truck driver. It was this indescribable moment of total silence and freezing cold and disbelief until the authorities came quite a bit later. I remember sitting in the back seat with my younger brothers wondering what the hell just happened. I was freshman in college and came back to my hometown for fall break. I decided to go to a football game to hang out with some old friends. On the way home, I stopped at a red light, and when it turned green, I pulled forward, as usual. From the left, a truck suddenly hit me. He was speeding and ran the red light, T-boned me right in front of my driver's door. I luckily got out with just an injured knee and fractured clavicle and some bruising. It haunted me for a while that, had I pulled forward just a little faster, or he had been just a quarter second slower, he would have gone straight into my driver's door and I likely wouldn't have made it. He wasn't even drunk or under the influence. It was just a 16-year-old kid not paying attention. My family and I were driving down the highway when we see a stopped sub in the middle of the highway with a family of 6 inside, and the car in front of us didn't get out of the way until the last second. My backpack got hit by a car while I was wearing it. Knocked me flat on my ass, but I was okay. Had a bad hangover and was kind of nervous / jittery, which in turn made me extra watchful. I was driving home, light turned green, and I started to go. Car going about 45 in crowded city traffic gives no fucks and goes right through the red. I slammed on the brakes and felt my anti-lock brakes engage for the first time in I don't know how long. Guy missed me by inches. Didn't even slow down. Had I not been hungover right out, I would have given the cross traffic that second look to see him barreling toward me. He likely would have T-boned me right in the driver's door. Earlier this week I saw a young guy almost get killed by a tram. He wasn't listening to music or anything, but it was early in the AM and he barely caught it out of the corner of his eye. The first thing he did was a textbook Wilhelm scream, and then he noticed me looking and said, "Well, I'm fucking awake now." It passed probably 2 centimeters in front of his nose. Edit. 1 second earlier, whatever. My dad and I were driving down the road after heavy rainfall in Vermont. He is driving and I'm fiddling with the radio. I hear a very loud crack, and before I can ask my dad what it was, out of the corner of my eye I see movement. An entire tree was falling on the road due to the heavy rainfall. The dirt was too wet to keep some trees in place. My dad stood on his brake, cartoon style, and we slid nearly right into the tree. I heard a pop before we fully stopped, and when we lurched back to 0 miles per hour, we were both breathing hard. My dad got out to check the damage, and the pop I hear was a branch hitting a headlight out. First time I've ever seen my dad call 911. It was scary. Could have been the end of us if he didn't stop to chat to the waitress after we left the restaurant to go home. When I was 5 or 6, we were on holidays in Australia. My mother took me to a beach that is known because it's safe thanks to a net system that doesn't let the sharks in. Well, when we arrived the beach was empty, what was kinda strange, but we continued to have a beach day and we had a bath. My mother even swam from one point to another. After that, we were going to the car and some authorities saw us. They told us to not enter the beach because a family of alligators had entered in the water and it was really dangerous. Don't think I would have died, but to change things up from car related incidents, I once left a lighter near a fire pit by mistake, and I was near it roasting marshmallows. I had to go inside to grab chocolate and I came back out, and just as I was walking back to the fire pit the lighter exploded. Not me, but my dad decided to stay for one more drink at a bar after work back in 1989. If he left before that last drink, he would have been on the old Bay Bridge, very close if not under the section that collapsed during the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. I was like 6 or 7 when my dad and I were driving to his parents' summer cabin. Suddenly, a huge fucking moose runs from the forest, from our right, and across the road. I mean, there's no small moose, let's get that straight. But this fucker was out of this world huge, and we avoided hitting it by literally just a second. It was so close that I'm sure we would have hit it. If either we or the moose gained a second somewhere, we would have been dead for sure. Hitting a moose with car is almost surely a death sentence anyway, but that thing was just so extra large that there would have been no chance. I used to work on a farm for a doctor that had antelopes on the property, and one of my jobs was to feed them. My 3rd day on the job was my first time actually doing it, since my coworkers did it before. I went out there with the feed and started to pour it out so that they could eat. My supervisor shouts from the other side of the fence not to turn my back to the male antelope, and I couldn't hear him, so the first thing I did was turn my back on the male antelope to ask my supervisor what he said. Almost immediately I'd realized what I had done and turned back around to see the antelope about to skewer me. I jumped out of the way and he ripped the shirt off of my back. Not me, but my brother. No, really. He had a hard time in college, didn't like his major, but didn't have any other ideas, had a hard time being motivated to attend class, etc. The final straw was when he ended a semester and was trying to get ready for the next semester. He was dropped by the scholarship that was paying his tuition for not making above the 3.5. He tried to hang himself in his closet one day. He told me right after in hysterics. He said he started blacking out and his head was fuzzy when his dog, half pit / half Australian cattle dog, positioned herself under him, barking and released the tension on his neck. He got out of it and called me. He doesn't like to talk about it because it was really traumatic and, he said, embarrassing because of the stigma in our community. But he told me a few times that the instant he started blacking out he regretted it and didn't want to die. When he called me, I had a grown man crying and saying, "It was so scary. I was so scared." Needless to say, the dog is highly regarded now. Lol. If you're in a hopeless situation, get help. Seriously. Make a call. Fuck what people say or think. I fucking love you. D-live arsehole. Edit. I typed this up then went to bed. Woke up to silver and gold. Thanks for that, peoples. The real silver and gold belongs to the dog, but she can't use the internet. Lol. No really. Thanks.